The crystal vase shattered against the wall, missing my head by inches. Purple orchids, Harold's favorite, scattered across the Persian rug we'd bought on our 40th anniversary. "You're being dramatic, Mother." Susan's perfectly manicured hand was still raised from the throw. "Just sign the papers." "My name is Eleanor Whitfield. I'm 71 years old, and my daughter just tried to force me to sign over power of attorney while her husband David rifled through my jewelry box upstairs. The thumping from the master bedroom meant he'd found the safe behind Harold's portrait. Good. Let him try to open it. Susan Marie Whitfield Morrison. I said, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. "Put down that pen." She grabbed my wrist, her acrylic nails digging into the thin skin. "You're confused, Mom. The doctor said nothing of the sort." I pulled free, noting the red crescents she'd left. Evidence. "Dr. Brennan gave me a clean bill of health last Tuesday. Want to see the report?" David's footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Where's the combination, Eleanor? Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder." I laughed, actually laughed. "You mean harder than discovering my daughter has been siphoning money from my accounts for 8 months. Harder than finding out you've already spent $67,000 of my retirement on your gambling debts." Susan's face went white. "How did you—" "The same way I knew you'd try this today." I reached for my phone on the side table. "You forgot I worked for Chase Manhattan for 37 years before they called it J.P. Morgan. I know every trick in the book, sweetheart. I wrote half of them." David lunged for my phone, but I was already hitting speed dial. "Don't you dare," Susan shrieked. "We're your family after everything we've done for you since Dad died. Everything you've done." My voice cracked for the first time. "You mean moving me into that assisted living hellhole so you could sell my house, telling everyone I have dementia when my mind is sharp as a surgical knife?" The phone rang once, twice. "Brennan Security," a crisp voice answered. "We have your alert, Mrs. Whitfield. Officers are 90 seconds out." "Thank you, Marcus." Susan's eyes darted between me and the door. "Mom, please. We can work this out. We're in trouble, real trouble. David owes some very dangerous people. Then you should have asked for help instead of trying to rob me." I stood my knee protesting after being shoved into the chair 20 minutes ago, another bruise to document. But what you didn't know, what neither of you bothered to learn in your greed, is that Harold left me more than just this house and the retirement accounts you've been draining. Blue lights flashed through the front window. David was already backing toward the kitchen door. "Sue, we need to go, now." "Sit down, David." My voice had the same edge I'd used to fire executive assistants who thought they could embezzle from the bank. "The house has been surrounded for the last 10 minutes. Every exit. Even the basement window you jimmied last week when you planted those dementia brochures." Susan sank onto the couch, tears ruining her $50 mascara. "You knew all this time, you knew. I've known since the moment you started. Since that first loan of $3,000 for Emma's dental surgery that she never needed. Since you started telling the neighbors I was losing my mind. Since David started visiting estate lawyers asking about conservatorship laws." The front door opened. Not kicked in, I'd given them the code. "But what really sealed your fate," I continued as 2 officers entered, "was yesterday, when you told Dr. Brennan I'd been hoarding pills and talking to Harold's ghost, when you tried to have me involuntarily committed." "Eleanor." David started his voice taking on that salesman tone that had fooled me once. "There's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said as Officer Martinez stepped behind him, "was yours. You thought you were stealing from a confused old woman with no family except you. You forgot I have another daughter, Rachel, the one you told me died in that car accident 5 years ago." Susan's sob was genuine this time. "She's been living in Singapore building her telecommunications company. We've been in contact for 2 years. She's been documenting everything, every lie, every theft, every cruel thing you said, thinking I was too far gone to remember." "You're lying," Susan whispered. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, swiped to a video. Rachel's face filled the screen, dated 3 days ago. "Hi, Mom. I've got everything ready on my end. The forensic accountants found all of it. The Cayman accounts, the forged checks, even the life insurance policy they took out on you. Give them hell. Officer Martinez had the handcuffs out now. Susan Morrison, David Morrison, you're under arrest for elder abuse fraud and attempted kidnapping. Kidnapping, David sputtered. What did you think forcing a 71-year-old woman into a car against her will was called? I asked. Especially when Marcus at Brennan Security has the whole thing on video from the doorbell camera. As they led my daughter away, she turned back one last time. I'm your daughter, Mom. Your blood. No, I said quietly. My daughter died the day she decided I was nothing but a bank account. You're just someone who looks like her. The house felt eerily quiet after the police cars pulled away. I walked to the scattered orchids, picked up one that had survived intact. Harold had planted these in our greenhouse the year before he died, said purple was the color of royalty, and I was his queen. You were right, my love, I whispered to his portrait. I did have more fight in me than they thought. But this was just the beginning. If Susan and David thought they were the only ones who'd been trying to take advantage of Harold's widow, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The real surprise was still coming. 3 days after Susan and David's arrest, I sat in the mahogany-paneled office of Richardson and Associates, watching James Richardson's face grow paler with each document he reviewed. Mrs. Whitfield, this is extensive. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Your daughter and son-in-law weren't just stealing. They were part of something larger. I know. I placed another folder on his desk. That's why I need you to look at page 47. James flipped to it, his eyes widening. They were working with Gerald, your Harold's brother, former brother. Harold disowned him 30 years ago after he embezzled from their father's construction company. I pulled out my phone, showing him a screenshot. This is from David's email to Gerald 3 months ago. The old bird is almost ready to crack. Another month and we'll have full control. How did you... Gerald made one mistake. He used the same password for his email that he used in 1994 for the company database. Some people never learn. I leaned back in my leather chair. But that's not the interesting part. Check the attachment. James clicked through his computer, pulling up the files I'd already sent. His face went from pale to ashen. They were planning to declare you incompetent. Take control of everything then. Mrs. Whitfield, this is a murder plot. Life insurance policies worth $12 million tend to motivate people, especially when they don't know about the other $18 million Harold left in trust in the Caymans. $30 million, James's voice cracked. Harold was worth $30 million. 42 actually, the rest is in property and art. I smiled at his shock. My husband sold his construction company to a Chinese conglomerate in 2008, right before the crash. Perfect timing. He just never told anyone except me and our lawyer in Switzerland. Mrs. Whitfield, with all due respect, why are you telling me this? I'm a prosecutor, not your attorney. Because Gerald is coming to town tomorrow. He thinks Susan and David's arrest is just a minor setback. He has no idea I know about his involvement. I stood smoothing my charcoal skirt. I need you to be ready with warrants. All of them. My phone buzzed. Marcus from Brennan Security. Mrs. Whitfield, we have a problem. There's been activity at your husband's old office building, the one that's supposed to be empty. Send me the footage. The video showed 3 men breaking into Harold's defunct construction office at 2 a.m. One of them was clearly Gerald despite the baseball cap. The second was David's brother Tony. The third made my blood run cold. Dr. Martin Hendricks, the psychiatrist Susan, had tried to have evaluate me. James, I said, showing him the screen. How quickly can you get those warrants? Give me 2 hours. I left his office and drove to the old industrial district where Harold's company once thrived. The building stood like a tomb. Windows, dark parking lot cracked with weeds. But I knew better. Harold had renovated the basement before he died, turned it into something special, something only I knew about. Marcus met me at the side entrance. They're still inside. Want me to call it in? Not yet, I need to see what they're after. We descended through the concealed stairway Harold had installed, emerging into his secret office, a fully equipped surveillance center that would make the NSA jealous. Harold had been paranoid about Gerald's eventual return. Turns out he was right. The monitors showed Gerald in Harold's old executive office, ripping apart filing cabinets. "Where is it?" Gerald snarled. Harry always kept hard copies. Always. "Maybe there's nothing to find," Tony suggested, but even on the grainy footage I could see his nervousness. "There's $40 million somewhere, and that old witch knows where it is. The paperwork has to be here." Dr. Hendricks spoke up. "We should focus on the commitment papers. Once she's declared incompetent, we can take our time finding the assets. Except now we don't have Susan to sign as next of kin." Gerald spat. "Your brilliant psychiatric evaluation plan failed when she got arrested." "We still have options," Hendricks insisted. "I've done this before. Remember the Patterson estate?" The widow fought for 2 years, but eventually, the Patterson widow. My hand clenched the desk edge. Martha Patterson was my bridge partner. She died of a suspicious heart attack after being forcibly committed. Marcus looked at me sharply. "You think they—" "I know they did, and now I have them admitting it on video." I pulled out my secure phone, dialing a number I'd hoped never to use. "Agent Walker, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Hello, Daniel. It's Eleanor Whitfield. Remember that favor you owed Harold?" "Mrs. Whitfield, I thought I'm sorry we were told you were suffering from dementia." Funny how rumors spread. "I'm perfectly healthy, and I'm watching 3 men discuss murdering me for my money while confessing to killing Martha Patterson. Are you interested?" "Where are you?" 1847 Industrial Way, basement level. Bring a full team. And Daniel, they're armed." 20 minutes later, the building was surrounded. I watched on the monitors as FBI agents swept in, catching all 3 men with boxes of documents they'd found in a hidden compartment. Documents Harold had deliberately planted with false information about accounts that didn't exist. Gerald's face when they cuffed him was priceless, but it turned to shock when I emerged from the basement. "Hello, Gerald." "Eleanor, but how—" "Harold always said you'd come back like a vulture when he died, so we prepared." I held up a leather journal. "This is Harold's real documentation. Every crime you've committed since 1985, every person you've cheated, every elderly victim you and Dr. Hendricks have destroyed. He hired private investigators to follow you for decades. You can't prove anything." "Can't I—" I played audio on my phone, Gerald's voice from 10 minutes ago, clear as day. "Remember the Patterson estate? The widow fought for 2 years, but eventually, Agent Walker stepped forward. Gerald Whitfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder fraud, and violation of the RICO Act." As they led him away, Gerald turned back. "You're 71 years old, Eleanor. You can't protect that money forever." "I don't need forever, just long enough to give it all to people who deserve it. Rachel's already setting up the charitable foundation, the Whitfield Trust for Elder Protection. We're going to use your brother's money to stop people like you." Dr. Hendricks was screaming about his rights, demanding his lawyer. Toni Morrison just looked defeated. 3 more predators who thought an old woman would be easy prey. But the day wasn't over. My phone rang the special ringtone I'd set for emergencies. "Mrs. Whitfield." It was Jennifer, my contact at the bank. "We've detected unusual activity. Someone's trying to access your safety deposit box with a court order." "Who signed it?" "Judge Raymond Fletcher." I smiled grimly. "Of course, Susan's godfather. I wondered when he'd make his move." Judge Raymond Fletcher had been Harold's best friend for 40 years. He'd bounced Susan on his knee when she was a baby, stood as best man at 3 of his weddings, and apparently been planning to rob me blind the moment Harold died. I sat in my home office now, fortified with new locks and security systems, video calling Rachel in Singapore. Her face filled the laptop screen, her expression furious. Judge Fletcher Dad trusted him with everything. Your father trusted too easily near the end. The cancer medication made him vulnerable. I pulled up financial records on my second monitor, but Harold wasn't completely foolish. He changed our will 6 months before he died, removing Fletcher as executor. Did Fletcher know? No. and that's our advantage." I showed her a document. "Fletcher's been issuing court orders to access our accounts, claiming he has power of attorney from 2018. But Harold revoked that in 2019, filed it in a different jurisdiction. Fletcher's been committing fraud for 18 months. My God, how much has he taken?" "Nothing yet. Harold set up a beautiful trap. Dummy accounts that look real but trigger federal alerts when accessed. Fletcher's tried 6 times. The FBI now has everything." Rachel laughed, the first genuine joy I'd heard from her in years. "Dad played the long game. Always. But Fletcher's getting desperate. My sources say he owes almost $2 million to a casino in Atlantic City, the kind that doesn't accept bankruptcy as payment." "What's our play?" I looked at Harold's portrait. "We let him think he's winning. I've scheduled a meeting tomorrow. Poor confused Eleanor needs help managing her finances after the trauma of Susan's arrest." "Mom, that's dangerous." "I'll have Agent Walker's team listening to every word. Plus Marcus will be there as my driver. Former Marine crack shot, and Fletcher won't recognize him." That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered Harold's study, running my fingers along his book spines. Behind Shakespeare's complete works, Harold's little joke was his real safe. Not the decoy David had found, but the one containing something more valuable than money. Evidence. 40 years of documents, photos, recordings. Harold had known about Fletcher's gambling since 1992, about Gerald's criminal network since 1988, about Susan's spending addiction since she was 25. He documented everything, preparing for the day they'd turn on me. "You knew," I whispered to his photograph. "You knew they'd come for me when you were gone." A USB drive labeled "For Ellie, play when ready" sat in the safe. I'd found it the day after the funeral, but hadn't had the courage to watch until now. Harold's face appeared on my laptop screen. He looked tired. This must have been filmed days before he died, but his eyes were sharp. "Hello, my love. If you're watching this, then they've shown their true colors. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you in person, but I've left you everything you need to protect yourself." Tears rolled down my cheeks as he continued. "Fletcher will move first. He's desperate and sloppy. Gerald will coordinate with Susan. They've been in contact since 2017. David's just a pawn, but watch his brother Tony. The real surprise will be Mitchell. Mitchell, our family lawyer for 20 years. Mitchell's been clean until now, but Fletcher has leverage photos from an affair. He'll try to flip Mitchell to change the will posthumously. Don't let him. The moment Mitchell contacts you about updating documents, you'll know Fletcher's made his move." My phone buzzed, text from Mitchell. "Eleanor, we need to discuss Harold's estate documents. Some irregularities have come to light." "Right on schedule." Harold's video continued. "In the bottom drawer of my desk, taped underneath, is a phone number. Call it when you're ready to end this. Ask for Prometheus." I found the number, dialed. "Prometheus Security International." The voice was crisp British. "This is Eleanor Whitfield. Harold said to call. Mrs. Whitfield, we've been expecting you for 18 months. Shall we initiate the protocol?" "Ganta in Paibinikot." "Yes." "Assets are being moved to secure locations as we speak. All parties under surveillance will be contained within 72 hours. Do you have a preference for the timeline? I thought about tomorrow's meeting with Fletcher. Give me 24 hours to get Fletcher on tape. Then move." "Understood. Your husband was very specific about protecting you. We won't fail." The next morning, I dressed carefully. Gray cardigan, pearls, sensible shoes, the uniform of a harmless elderly woman. The Glock 19 in my purse was less grandmotherly, but Harold had insisted I learn to shoot after Gerald first surfaced. Fletcher's office reeked of cigarette smoke and desperation. He'd aged, poorly bloated face, trembling hands, the telltale signs of a gambling addict in free fall. "Eleanor, dear Eleanor." He grasped my hands, his palms sweaty. "Such a terrible business with Susan. How are you holding up?" "I'm confused, Raymond." I let my voice quaver. "So many documents, so many accounts. Harold handled everything." His eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting cherries. Of course. That's why I'm here, as Harold's executor. But you're not." I pulled out the revocation document. Harold changed that in 2019. Fletcher's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing fury before he recovered. This must be a forgery. Poor Harold wasn't well at the end. People took advantage. Did they? I placed a recorder on his desk, making sure he saw it. Is that what you're doing now, Raymond? Taking advantage? How dare you? How dare I protect myself, fight back, refuse to be a victim? I stood no longer the confused old woman. I know about the casino debts, the forged documents, the 6 attempts to access accounts that don't exist. Fletcher lunged across the desk, grabbing for my throat, but I was ready. The pepper spray hit him directly in the eyes. He screamed, falling backward. Marcus burst through the door, weapon drawn. Mrs. Whitfield? I'm fine. Judge Fletcher just assaulted me. Did you get it on video? Every second. Fletcher was sobbing now, clawing at his eyes. You bitch! You planned this! Actually, Harold planned it. I'm just executing his final wishes. I straightened my pearls. Oh, Raymond, the FBI is downstairs. Something about RICO violations and attempted murder. Agent Walker entered with his team. Judge Fletcher, you're under arrest. Wait, Fletcher gasped. I'll tell you everything Mitchell's involved. He's been changing wills for years. And there's more. A whole network, doctors, lawyers, judges, all targeting elderly clients. Keep talking, Walker said, pulling out his recorder. As Fletcher spilled names, dates, amounts. I felt Harold's presence. This was his final gift, not just protecting me, but exposing the entire system preying on the elderly. My phone buzzed. The British voice from Prometheus. Phase 1 complete. 17 accounts frozen. 12 subjects in custody across 3 states. Shall we proceed with Phase 2? Proceed. The FBI raid began at exactly 6 a.m. across 7 states. I watched from the command center Agent Walker had set up in the federal building monitors, showing simultaneous operations unfold like a choreographed dance Harold had planned from beyond the grave. Mitchell's mansion in Connecticut went first. The lawyer who'd helped elderly clients update their wills right into poverty fought viciously, destroying hard drives even as agents stormed in. But Harold had anticipated this. Every document Mitchell thought he'd shredded had already been photographed by the cleaning lady, a Prometheus operative, who'd been placed there 2 years ago. Got him, Agent Walker announced as Mitchell was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming about entrapment. The second monitor showed Dr. Hendrix's psychiatric facility in Maryland. 14 elderly patients, all declared incompetent, all mysteriously wealthy before their commitments. The FBI medical team was discovering massive overdoses of psychotropic drugs, creating the dementia symptoms families use to justify conservatorships. Mrs. Whitfield. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead medical examiner, appeared on screen 3. We found your friend, Martha Patterson. She's alive. My legs nearly gave out. What? Heavily medicated, registered under a false name, but alive. We're bringing her out now. Martha Patterson, whom they'd told me died of a heart attack. My bridge partner, my friend imprisoned for 3 years in a medical facility, drugged into compliance while her family looted her estate. How many others? So far 23, all supposedly dead, all very much alive. Gerald's network had been larger than even Harold imagined. But Harold had one more card to play. Rachel appeared on screen 4 from Singapore, sitting in a boardroom with dozen lawyers. Mom, we're ready here. Do it. She smiled and turned to the lawyers. Execute the transfers. Every penny Gerald Fletcher Mitchell and their network had stolen over 2 decades began moving. Harold had traced it all, followed the money through shells companies, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency exchanges. Now, with the FBI freezing their primary accounts, the conspirators couldn't stop the automatic transfers Harold had programmed to trigger upon their arrests. $47 million flowed in minutes. Not to me, I didn't want their blood money. Every cent went to the victims, their families, or to the Whitfield Trust for Elder Protection. No. Fletcher's voice echoed from the interrogation room. That's our money, you can't... Actually, I said, entering the room where he was chained to the table, it was never yours. It belonged to the 347 elderly people you've robbed over 20 years. He looked at me with pure hatred. Harold's dead. You're just a bitter old woman playing with his toys. Harold is dead, I agreed. But his legacy just saved 23 people locked in psychiatric facilities, returned money to 347 families, and exposed a criminal network across 7 states. What's your legacy, Raymond? Besides a prison cell. Agent Walker handed me a tablet. Mrs. Whitfield, there's something else. The screen showed Susan in her jail cell talking to someone off camera. The audio was clear. Mom thinks she's so smart, but she doesn't know about the Zurich account. Dad set it up for me before he got sick. $50 million. She'll never find it. $50 million in Zurich. I looked at Walker. She's lying. Harold never had accounts in Zurich. You're certain? Absolutely. Harold hated Swiss banks, called them Nazi gold launderers. Every offshore account was in the Caymans or Singapore. Walker smiled grimly. Then someone else set up that account using Harold's name. Recently. How recently? 6 months ago, right after Harold's cancer diagnosis. The final piece clicked. It's a trap. Harold set up a honeypot account to see who would try to access it after he died. I pulled out Harold's USB, plugged it into Walker's computer. Buried in the files was a folder labeled Zurich Trap. Inside was documentation for an account Harold had indeed created with the FBI and Swiss authorities. Any attempt to access it would trigger immediate arrest for international fraud. Your daughter just confessed to knowledge of a criminal conspiracy, Walker said. We can add 10 years to her sentence. No. The word surprised even me. Mrs. Whitfield, she's still my daughter. Somewhere under the greed and lies is the little girl who made me Mother's Day cards from construction paper. I looked at Susan on the monitor, her face hard and calculating even in jail. Add the charges, but offer her a deal. Full cooperation against the network in exchange for minimum security and the possibility of parole in 15 years instead of 30. Walker nodded slowly. That's generous. That's strategic. Susan knows names Harold didn't. She was Gerald's backup plan. The door burst open. Marcus rushed in, phone in hand. Mrs. Whitfield, urgent call. It's the kidnappers. What kidnappers? They have Rachel. My blood turned to ice. On the phone, a digitally altered voice spoke. Eleanor Whitfield, you have 1 hour to transfer $100 million or your daughter dies. No FBI, no tricks, or you'll receive her in pieces. But then I heard it barely audible in the background. Morse code tapping. Rachel had learned it from Harold when she was 12, their secret game. She was tapping TRAPREADY. Trap ready. This was part of Harold's plan, too. I need proof of life, I said, playing my part. Mom. Rachel's voice scared but steady. They grabbed me from the office. Please just do what they say. More tapping GPS ACTIVE. I'll transfer the money, I said. Send me the account details. The account information came through a bank in the Philippines known for money laundering. But what the kidnappers didn't know was that Harold had been working with international authorities for 5 years, setting up sting operations. Mrs. Whitfield. Agent Walker was pulling up files rapidly. This account, it's one of ours. It's a trap account monitored by Interpol. I smiled coldly. Harold knew someone would make a desperation play. He had Rachel prepared for this. On the monitors, Interpol agents were already moving in Manila, Singapore, and Tokyo. The kidnapping was being run remotely, but Rachel had activated the GPS trackers Harold had insisted she wear in her earrings, her wedding ring even woven into her bra. Found her, Marcus announced. Warehouse in Singapore, 6 miles from her office. Local authorities are en route. Transfer the money. I told Walker. What? It's traceable marked, and the moment it hits that account, Interpol can track every person who touches it. Harold called it painting the network. Everyone involved gets marked with digital dye. I initiated the transfer from one of Harold's trap accounts money that looked real, but was actually FBI property used for stings. The kidnappers took the bait. 20 minutes later, Rachel's voice came through the speakers. I'm safe. Singapore police have 7 in custody. Who hired them? You're not going to believe this. It was David's mother, Patricia Morrison. Patricia. David's mother, who'd been at every family dinner for 20 years, who'd called me her second mom, who'd cried at Harold's funeral. She was the mastermind, I asked. No, Rachel said. She was following orders. Mom, there's one more person, the real head of the network. Who? Check Harold's final video. He said you'd know when to watch the end. I pulled up Harold's video, skipped to the last 5 minutes I hadn't watched. Harold's face was grave. Ellie, if you're watching this part, then they've all shown themselves except one. The one who started it all. The one who convinced Gerald to come back, who helped Fletcher with his gambling debts to control him, who placed Susan and David together. He paused, then said the name that shattered my world. Your sister, Catherine. Catherine. My younger sister, who'd been living in France for 30 years, who'd been at Harold's funeral comforting me, who'd suggested I move to the assisted living facility for my own good. She's been planning this since we got married, Harold continued. She never forgave you for marrying me instead of letting her have me. 45 years of resentment, Ellie, and now she's coming for everything. The phone rang. Catherine's international number. Hello, Ellie. Her voice was sweet poison. I hear you've been busy today, taking down Gerald Fletcher, even poor Patricia, but you missed the queen on the chessboard. Catherine. Did you really think Harold was that smart? I fed him every piece of information. I told him about Gerald's network so he'd document it. I wanted him paranoid, isolated, trusting no one but you. And when he died, I knew you'd follow his little breadcrumbs right into my trap. What trap? Check your accounts, dear sister. My blood ran cold. I pulled up my main account, the one with the $30 million from Harold's life insurance and investments. Empty. How? Remember when you gave me power of attorney, when you had that minor surgery 5 years ago? You forgot to revoke it. I've been a signer on your accounts this entire time, waiting for the perfect moment. The FBI will do nothing. I haven't committed a crime. I'm an authorized user moving money between family accounts. By the time they sort out the legal complexities, I'll be in a non-extradition country living under a new identity I've spent 20 years building. She was right. The one person Harold hadn't suspected was the one who'd been playing the longest game. Goodbye, Ellie. Enjoy your poverty. It's what you deserve for stealing the life that should have been mine. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, then started laughing. Agent Walker looked at me with concern. Mrs. Whitfield, she took the bait. I managed between laughs. She actually took the bait. What bait? I pulled out a second phone, one Harold had given me the day before he died. On it was a banking app for an account in Harold's name alone. Balance $382 million. Harold knew about Catherine. Of course he did. He knew about everyone. I showed Walker the screen. The $30 million she stole. It was a honeypot. Marked bills, tracked accounts, the whole thing. But more importantly, she just confessed to a 45-year conspiracy spanning international borders. That's wire fraud, international racketeering conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and about 17 other federal crimes. I smiled. Harold always said Catherine's ego would be her downfall. She couldn't resist gloating. Walker was already on his phone barking orders. Within minutes, Interpol had Catherine's location, a private jet heading to Morocco. Morocco has an extradition treaty with the U.S. for financial crimes over $10 million, Walker said. We can grab her when she lands. No, I said. Let her run. Let her think she's won, because that $30 million, it has a surprise Harold built in. What kind of surprise? In exactly 72 hours, every cent will automatically transfer to the Whitfield Trust for elder protection, and notifications will be sent to every major news outlet showing Catherine Brennan as the largest inadvertent donor to elder abuse prevention in history. Rachel laughed over the phone. Dad thought of everything. Not everything, I admitted. He didn't think I'd forgive Susan, or that I'd want to use this to save other families, not just punish ours. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Portland buzzed with media attention. The largest elder fraud network in U.S. history had resulted in 47 convictions, recovered $230 million for victims, and freed 23 illegally confined elderly patients. I sat in the witness gallery, no longer the grieving widow in sensible shoes, but the founder of the Whitfield Trust, wearing a sharp navy suit Harold would have loved. Susan stood at the defendant's table for her sentencing. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes replaced with a simple gray dress. But something else had changed. The hard calculation in her eyes had given way to what looked like genuine remorse. Before sentencing, Judge Martinez said, "Does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Susan turned to face me. "I've had 6 months to think about what I did, to realize I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who saw her mother as a bank account instead of the woman who stayed up all night when I had scarlet fever, who worked 2 jobs to pay for my college, who loved me even when I didn't deserve it." Her voice cracked. "Mom, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I'm facing prison, but because I betrayed the one person who never betrayed me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that somewhere inside this person I became your daughter still exists. And she's sorry." Judge Martinez sentenced her to 8 years minimum security with possibility of parole in 4, the deal she'd earned by testifying against the network. David got 12 years in federal prison. He'd refused to cooperate, still convinced he'd done nothing wrong. Outside the courthouse, Martha Patterson waited for me finally healthy after 3 years of forced medication. We walked to a nearby cafe, the same one where Harold had proposed 46 years ago. "You saved my life, Eleanor." "Harold saved your life. I just followed his instructions." "No," Martha said firmly. "Harold gave you tools, but you chose how to use them. You could have just protected yourself, taken the money, and disappeared. Instead, you saved 23 people and countless future victims." My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel with a photo her twin boys, Harold's grandchildren he'd never met, playing in the garden of the new elder care facility the trust had just opened in Singapore. "We named it Harold's Haven," her message read. "Dad would be proud." Catherine had been arrested in Morocco 3 days after stealing the money. The automatic transfer had worked perfectly. She'd accidentally become the largest donor to elder protection in history. The media loved the irony. She was now serving 25 years in federal prison, her cell 3 doors down from Gerald's. Fletcher had died in custody, a heart attack brought on by withdrawal from his various addictions. Mitchell had been disbarred and imprisoned. Dr. Hendricks faced 140 counts of false imprisonment and medical abuse. Patricia Morrison. David's mother had fled to Brazil, but the money was recovered. The network was destroyed. "What now?" Martha asked. "Now I live," I said. "Really live. Not just exist in Harold's shadow or define myself as someone's widow. The trust is running well. Rachel's managing the international division, and I just bought a ticket to Greece." "Greece. Harold and I always planned to go for our 50th anniversary." I smiled. "I'll scatter some of his ashes in the Aegean, drink ouzo at sunset, and maybe even dance with a handsome stranger. He'd want that for you." "He would. You know what he told me the day before he died? 'Ellie, I'm leaving you more than money. I'm leaving you freedom. Freedom from fear, from dependency, from anyone who'd try to make you small. Use it.'" 2 years later, the Whitfield Trust annual gala filled the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. 300 guests each, paying $1,000 a plate to support elder protection services. We'd saved over 400 elderly victims in 2 years, recovered nearly $1 billion, and gotten legislation passed in 12 states strengthening elder abuse laws. I stood at the podium looking out at the crowd. Martha sat at the front table, now my co-director. Rachel had flown in from Singapore with her family. Even Susan was there, released early for good behavior, and now working as a counselor for gambling addicts, using her story to help others avoid her mistakes. Harold Whitfield was a carpenter who became a millionaire. I began my speech, but his greatest construction project wasn't a building or a business. It was a trap for predators built with love, seasoned with justice, and triggered by his death. The audience was silent, captivated. Elder abuse is a $3 billion industry in America. Every year, 1 in 10 seniors faces financial exploitation, usually by someone they trust. Harold knew he couldn't protect me forever, but he could arm me for the battle. Today, the Whitfield Trust arms hundreds of seniors with knowledge, legal support, and the fundamental understanding that they are not victims, They are warriors." Applause thundered through the ballroom. After the gala, Susan approached me hesitantly. We'd been rebuilding slowly monthly lunches, supervised at first, then gradually more natural. "Mom, I wanted to tell you, I'm getting married again." "Oh, his name is Marcus. He's a counselor at the treatment center. He knows everything about my past and loves me anyway. I'm happy for you. Would you consider walking me down the aisle? I know it's a lot to ask." "Yes." She blinked in surprise. "Really? Susan, you're my daughter. You made terrible choices, but you've owned them and changed. That takes courage. Harold would want me to recognize that." She hugged me, then crying into my shoulder like she had as a child. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart." Later that evening, I stood on my balcony, not the tiny one from the senior living facility, but the wraparound terrace of my new penthouse overlooking the city. The Whitfield Trust offices occupied the 3 floors below. Harold's portrait hung in the boardroom, watching over our work. My phone rang, unknown number. "Mrs. Whitfield." The voice was young, scared. "My name is Jennifer Chen. I think my children are trying to have me declared incompetent. I found your story online. Can you help me?" "Where are you, Jennifer?" "Seattle. They're coming with doctors tomorrow. I don't know what to do." I was already reaching for my emergency response phone. "Jennifer, listen carefully. Don't sign anything. Record everything on your phone. We'll have someone there within 2 hours." After dispatching a trust response team, I looked at Harold's photo on my desk, the one from our last anniversary, both of us laughing at something silly. "Still saving people my love," I whispered. "Still fighting the good fight." The phone rang again. Another elder in trouble. Another predator to stop. Another life to save. Harold had left me more than money. He'd left me a mission. And at 73 years old, I was just getting started. The war against elder abuse had found its general, and her name was Eleanor Whitfield. Epilogue. 5 years after Harold's death. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier who insisted on placing it directly in my hands. The envelope was thick, expensive, sealed with wax. Inside a single paragraph in Harold's handwriting, authenticated by 3 forensic experts. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then you've won. You've saved them all, including yourself. But there's one more gift. Remember our first date. Remember what I promised you under the stars. Check the roses. All my love, Harold." The roses. His purple orchids in what used to be our greenhouse, now carefully maintained at the trust headquarters. I went there immediately, Marcus, now my son-in-law, accompanying me. We dug carefully around the oldest plant, the one Harold had planted on our first anniversary. The box was small, waterproof, sealed, inside a USB drive and a single key. The USB contained a video. Harold young and healthy, maybe 5 years into our marriage. "Ellie, I'm recording this in 1983. If you're watching this, it means you've not just survived, but thrived. The key opens a safety deposit box at the Bank of Zurich, the real one, not Catherine's trap. Account number 447-891-326. I've been depositing something there every year since our wedding. Not money, you have plenty of that. Something better. Go see." 3 days later, I stood in a Swiss bank vault. The safety deposit box was larger than standard, requiring 2 bank officials to retrieve it. Inside, 45 letters, 1 for each year of our marriage. Each one dated for the anniversary Harold knew he might not live to see. Love letters for the future, written by a man who understood that love transcends death. The first one marked Year 46 began. "My darling Ellie, I'm not there to hold you on this anniversary, but I'm watching you save the world. You were always the strong one. I just gave you the tools to prove it." I read them all crying and laughing in that sterile Swiss vault. The last one, Year 90, assuming I'd lived to 113, ended with, "Yo, if you're reading this, you've outlived everyone. The predators, the thieves, even our mortality. You've won completely. Now dance, my love. Dance at our 90th anniversary party, even if I'm just there in spirit. I'll be the one whispering in your ear that you're still the most beautiful woman in the world. Forever yours, Harold." I flew home with the letters, had each one framed, and hung them in my private study. Every anniversary, I open that year's letter. Harold continues to tell me he loves me year after year, even from beyond the grave. The Whitfield Trust has now saved over 10,000 elderly victims. The legislation we pushed through Congress makes elder fraud a federal crime with mandatory minimums. Susan runs our West Coast operations fully redeemed and fiercely protective of every client. Rachel manages our international division from Singapore. Catherine died in prison last year. She never expressed remorse. Gerald lasted 6 months before another inmate whose grandmother had been one of his victims delivered justice. Harold couldn't. Martha and I still play bridge every Tuesday. She's 84 now, sharp as ever, and likes to joke that we're the golden girls with teeth. Some nights I dream about Harold. He's always in his garden tending those purple orchids, smiling that crooked smile that made me fall in love at 19. He never speaks in the dreams, just points to the roses and winks. I know what he's saying. Keep growing, Ellie. Keep fighting. Keep blooming. So I do. Every morning I wake up in my penthouse, check the Trust's overnight reports, respond to emergency calls, and prepare for battle. Because somewhere out there, an elderly person is being told they're too confused to manage their own life. Somewhere a son or daughter is eyeing their parents' savings with greed instead of love. Somewhere a predator is circling. And I'll be damned if they'll succeed on my watch. Harold gave me the weapons. The network gave me the war. But the victory, that's mine. And I'm not done winning yet.